All right, on today's program, we'll be talking about the tricks of the trade for delivering managed Wi-Fi services to large multi-tenant buildings. My guest today is a wireless legend, Dick Sherwin of SpotOn. Join us right after the show break. All right, welcome back, everybody. My name is Claus Hetting, and I'm the host of Wi-Fi Now TV, the show that brings you all the great stories and not least all the great people from across the Wi-Fi industry. And today we'll be talking Wi-Fi managed services for multi-tenant buildings with wireless veteran and legend, Dick Sherwin. He is the CEO of SpotOn and is a member, by the way, of the Wireless Hall of Fame. So we're really looking forward to that, and we'll get to Dick in just a second. Now, before I do that, I want to make sure that you know that we're taking Wi-Fi Now, the expo and conference, to the great city of Washington, D.C. on April 18th to 20th. We were there last year. We had a great time. We had a blast. So we're going to go back to D.C. in about 3 months' time, just a little bit less. We're already open for business, so that means you can already reserve your ticket. And if you're interested in exhibiting or some other role at Wi-Fi Now DC, you better be quick because we're filling up fast. So for all the details, go to wifinowevents.com/USA. And if you have any questions, drop me a line at klaus@wifinowevents.com. Always delighted to hear from you. So my guest today is Dick Sherwin. He is the CEO of SpotOn Networks, based, I think, in Connecticut. In the US, of course. Dick has worked in the wireless and cable industry for many, many years. He established, among other things, 47 telecoms ventures in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union back, I think, in the 80s. He's a true telecoms pioneer and a member of the Wireless Hall of Fame. That Wireless Hall of Fame belongs to the Wireless History Foundation. Dick, we're honored and delighted to have you on the show. Welcome.
Klaus, thank you very much.
It's good to see you. So the topic of our discussion today is how to manage Wi-Fi services. But before we get to that, just give us a short introduction to SpotOn.
Sure. First of all, I'm not sure you'd call me a legend. However, having said that, there were a number of people involved in the early days of the cellular telephone business, and these people subsequently developed wireless services, as you pointed out, in Eastern Europe. We spent from 1990 through 2000 and change doing wireless projects, the 47 projects in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. As a result of the experience that we had both in the US and in the former Soviet Union, we developed a multi-tenant building strategy for wireless. Why? We always knew that wireless was going to be a prevalent method of communications. And the multi-tenant sphere was just beginning to grow in the United States, but it occupies 95% of the people in the former Soviet Union, because they all live in these big block concrete buildings. And we learned a great deal about radio frequency when we were in Eastern Europe. We then took that information and we developed an approach here in the United States for multi-tenant buildings using Wi-Fi as a, quote, cellular type service. And that's how we began. Today, we provide service to well over 1,000 buildings and Wi-Fi areas. For instance, we do the New Haven Green, we do the Newport Park in Jersey City. We do a number of different functions. We provide not only Wi-Fi services and specifically Wi-Fi calling, but we also provide something called Cell Boost, which is a cellular augmentation service where buildings have problems with cellular services. So that's sort of the background.
Right. So tell us what you think are the essential elements of providing a really good managed service, because of course there's a lot of unmanaged Wi-Fi out there, and it sometimes works and sometimes not, and so forth. So, people obviously, there's a market for doing this right. So what are the tricks of the trade that you'd like to share with us? Maybe not too many, because there's probably competitors listening, but what's your view on that?
They can listen. We are unafraid. You've hit the nail on the head. There are best effort Wi-Fi, and there's not so good Wi-Fi, and then there's managed Wi-Fi that's high quality. We believe in certain things. We believe the user experience is critical. You have to have a very good customer service and network operations center function. And so what we did was we invented a proprietary platform in which our networks are always monitored and our network operations center is always alerted to issues. And we have a group of dedicated customer service representatives that handle residents' needs for connectivity and users' needs for connectivity. Secondly, we believe security is a critical issue. Mm-hmm. We have a patented technology called user-safe technology. It is a technology that effectively provides client isolation, not just at an access point, but across an entire network. And as a result, users of our network cannot be spoofed or hacked. And we provide that security throughout all of our networks and throughout the entire network. Mm-hmm. With the advent of Wi-Fi calling, one more point, and then I'll give up. With the advent of Wi-Fi calling, seamless roaming has become a critical issue. And we provide seamless roaming in that a user of our network can move from one access point to another access point, and the call is carried forward. So we think seamless roaming is also, seamless service is very important as well.
Absolutely critical, I think, as well, of course, and that has been, the Achilles heel, if you like, of Wi-Fi for a long time. But is that then your patented technology, or where does that come from?
Well, we have the development of the platform itself, and then we utilize technology that affords the movement from one access point to another. So it's a combination of things. I would say that the technology that's available off the shelf can provide a large portion of this capability.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Dick, maybe share with us one or two case stories. I think came across, one of the reasons why I asked you to come, because I came across a story on government housing, a very big government housing project. I think, you must correct me if I'm wrong, I think it might be in New York and New Jersey. And so what's that all about? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. That's a good use case for us to talk about. Mm-hmm. The project you're talking about is the New York City Housing Authority Queensbridge project. It is the largest single housing authority project in the United States, with 3,149 residents, 3,149 apartments, 7,000 residents. We have begun to provide our services, a Wi-Fi service to the entire project. And the purpose of it was to bridge the digital divide. Mayor Bill de Blasio had focused as a target to bridge the digital divide for people who live in affordable housing. And I agree with him. I admire the concept. And what we've done is we've established a design and a service that operates extremely well, offering 25 megabit per second service synchronous to these residents, that allows them, their children, to be educated, that allows them to access city services. And these are really great things for these people in these authorities. What we've done is we've brought fiber to the complex. The complex is made up of 6 huge blocks, 26 clusters, 95 buildings. And we brought fiber to several different points within the complex, and then distributed the high-speed internet access via our user-safe Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a fantastic story, and I think it's a fantastic story, a super important one. And I would argue that Wi-Fi specifically, because the cost of the equipment is comparatively low, is ideal to bring down also the cost to the end user. Would you agree to that?
Absolutely. So just as a further emphasis on what you've just said, if you compare what we did in delivering the service to a standard wired approach, the cost is less than half. Mm-hmm. So I think that sort of adheres, it sort of emphasizes what you're saying. Mm-hmm. The other use case we have, do you want another use case?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So right nearby the New York City Housing Authority Queensbridge project is a medium income location two towers built by the related companies, 925 residential apartments, about 1,500 to 2,000 residents in the building. The Wi-Fi calling we provide to that building essentially permitted the owner to not have to invest in a $1.7 million distributed antenna system. By merely providing Wi-Fi calling, it's a young demographic, so everybody has smartphones, everybody knows how to use it. So we have a virtual local area network that handles Wi-Fi calling. We have another virtual local area network that handles high-speed data services for residents who wish to subscribe. And lastly, we have other virtual local area networks that handle Sonos music, screens, fitness center equipment, and so forth.
Mm. Well, that's fantastic. And even, I just have to make this comment, even some of the hotel operators that I talk to are really, really happy about the advent of Wi-Fi calling, because they have the same problem. They have to try to get operators or even themselves install very expensive DAS equipment in their hotels. It's a huge deal. So that is really a big deal. And it's really good you bring it up. I think it's an excellent point. So if we talk about the technology for a while, I mean, the Wi-Fi is good for a lot of things. It's also has some drawbacks, of course. What would be the areas of improvement specifically for Wi-Fi as you see it from the point of view of your business, do you think?
Well, certainly, as I mentioned earlier, security is a key issue. Mm-hmm. There have been so many articles written about hacking and wireless hacking specifically. And what we've done is we've made the attempt through this patented technology that we have to eliminate that possibility. So security is one major issue. And of course, Hotspot 2.0 with its encryption technology and the way in which it's going to fashion itself once it gets developed in the United States, like it is being developed in Europe, I think that will also help in the security environment. Mm-hmm. The second point is the user experience itself. Mm-hmm. One of the problems you mentioned earlier in the beginning of this session is how people feel that the service is not adequate, it's not good, they get knocked off. We hear hotel stories that are unbelievable about how slow it is and how poor it is and so forth. What we've done is, through patent pending tesselated good design and through our user safe technology, we believe we've given the kind of service that people require in order to make it a quote unquote carrier class service.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that is key. I want to ask you one more question about the MDU or the multi-tenant segment, because I suppose in many cases the apartments and the people living in large buildings and so forth already have, for example, cable subscription. They might even in some cases have subscription for the entire building and so forth. How do you break through into that market? Are we talking mostly about new buildings and apartment blocks and so forth going up, or do you have a way of doing that?
I'm glad you asked the question.
Good.
You're my shield.
Okay.
So we have a couple of different things that we emphasize when we put Wi-Fi into a building. With Wi-Fi calling, obviously, the biggest one is you want to use your smartphone for Wi-Fi calling. Well, if you're using your Wi-Fi calling on your own router, the minute you walk out your door, you drop the call. Is that what you want? The answer is, of course, no. So that's number one in Wi-Fi calling terms, which I think is critical. The second thing is this. We deliver services to a building owner at a cost ratio that is substantially less so that the owner can offer the service at a much reduced rate to the cable company or the carrier. Mm-hmm. But of course, we also work together with telcos like Verizon campus communities, and we try to make it work so that each of the service providers offers a service that is unique and well received by the user.
I think it's an excellent answer, and I like the fact that you got into the Wi-Fi calling discussion, because that has been a super important driver for the Wi-Fi industry generally. So I think those are very good points. Let's go a little bit back in time because you're such an experienced person, and I'd like to get your view on a couple of things that maybe hark back to an earlier age. In your view, Dick, how would you say the business of wireless has changed over the past, 5, 10, maybe 15 years?
Well, we can go back further to 20.
Okay, go ahead.
That's because I'm old. I think the best way I can describe this to you is in 1979, Lehman Brothers performed a study for AT&T. And that study, basically by reputedly great financial analysts and soothsayers and so forth, was this: 1% of the United States population would have cellular telephones in the future. 1%. Okay? That's sort of an indication of the limit of imagination that exists in wireless services. Mm-hmm. If you look back to 1990, if you told somebody there was going to be a 30% penetration in cellular telephones, they'd tell you were bombing. Right?
Right.
Nobody would pay the price, except a few pioneers like Craig McCaw and John Kluge and Stu Subotnick and John Stanton. They paid. Why? Because they knew that the penetration rate would always go up. Today in the United States, we're 100% penetrated, maybe even more. So the use of wireless is a critical issue, especially with younger people who have the need to be mobile. And with smartphone technology developed by Apple in 2007, I think we've seen an explosion of usage, mobile usage, video streaming, not only the standard applications like email and things like that, but video streaming, Wi-Fi calling. These are all going to continue to grow, and I think that's what you're going to see.
So what do you think is going to be the next explosion? Do you have any ideas? Or you'd have to pay me $1 million to tell me what?
No, I'm happy to tell you if I could think of it. I mean, I'm probably not right. But let me segue into something that you and I had discussed in the past, which is 5G. So there has been some discussion by industry pundits that 5G is going to take over the world in 2020. I'm not sure. My view on this is simple. We believe Wi-Fi is going to continue to improve its technology. If you see what IEEE is doing and what ETSI is doing and so forth, you see that they've just released AC, now AC Wave 2, there's AD, there are a whole series of things on the drawing boards that are coming out. What's the critical issue? In my mind, the critical issue is this. As you have more and more people using wireless services, you need something very critical called spectrum. Well, here's the interesting thing. The largest carriers in the United States have maybe 150 megahertz of spectrum in New York City for the entire city. We, SpotOn Networks, as a Wi-Fi operator, a managed service provider, have 650 megahertz of spectrum in every building we operate. And we can reuse the spectrum because it's low power. Is that the way 5G is going? Yes, I think it is the way 5G is going. But will they ever get there on licensed spectrum alone? The answer is probably not. So I think there's going to be a convergence of what you would call licensed spectrum and unlicensed spectrum. I think Wi-Fi devices, because they're so prolific now, will continue to be needed to be served. And there's no getting away from that. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think that answers my question spot on, and I think you're absolutely right, especially on the spectrum part, and that's a message that I've been trying to get across to people for a very long time. Actually, and honestly, it's not something that you hear mentioned a lot. This comparison between the typical amount of licensed spectrum an operator would have, and how much is available completely for free for anybody to use. And in addition to that, if you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you are a service provider for example, multi-tenant apartment complex and so on, then you have not the official rights to that spectrum, but the de facto right to that spectrum, because there's probably not going to be that many other folks using it in that area where you're the service provider, right?
Well, the telephone companies, some of the telephone companies have taken the position that because residents in multi-tenant buildings can have Wi-Fi routers, that there's always going to be interference. We think we've solved that problem.
Right.
Interference remediation. We think our tessellated grid design solves that problem. The key, you are absolutely right. The key is if you can have access to all that spectrum in a large building, and you can divide it properly the way we're doing it now, you can offer services far into the future that nobody else can offer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you completely answered all the questions that I have on my list here, even before I asked some of them, because I was going to ask you about how do you see the business opportunities for Wi-Fi evolving over the next years, but you're obviously very bullish on that as I am as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Dick, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, and please come back and see us again. It's really been great talking to you here. All right.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Absolutely welcome. You're absolutely welcome.
Thank you
so much to Dick Sherwin. Thanks. Thank you so much to Dick Sherwin from SpotOn. And that's it for this week's show. Next week, I'll be talking to a company that's making waves in city Wi-Fi with their SmartLink kiosk solution. And that's really exciting. So join us for that next week. Thank you to my guest. And thanks for watching, everybody out there. Have a great day.
Wi-Fi Now is a production of RCR TV News. To suggest a show topic or to learn more about Wi-Fi Now events, you can reach Claus Hetting at klaus@hettingconsulting.com. To find out more about Wi-Fi Now and all things wireless, visit rcrwireless.com.